Hi, I'm Peter J. Ray. Welcome. Today's topic is the 1916 Cleveland Indians MLB baseball season. It was a new era for the Indians. We had a new owner, Sonny Jim Dunn, and a new superstar player, Tris Speaker. Again, the Indians were playing in the American League, the junior circuit of Major League Baseball, and they were playing home games at League Park, which was renamed Dunn Field in 1916. Kind of like Jacobs Field many years later, at East 66th and Lexington. The Tribe finished in 6th place in 1916. There was a big improvement. Their record was 77 and 77, finished at 500, 14 games out of first place. The first place team was the Boston Red Sox, who were 91 and 63, winning percentage of .591. Second place, the Chicago White Sox, 89 and 65. Third place, the Detroit Tigers, 87 and 67. Fourth place, the New York Yankees, 80 and 74. Fifth place, the St. Louis Browns, 79 and 75. Sixth place, the Cleveland Indians, 77 and 77. Seventh place, the Washington Senators, 76 and 77. And in eighth and last place, the Philadelphia Athletics were 36 and 117. Winning percentage of .235. Connie Mack was rebuilding in Philadelphia. The attendance for the Tribe in 1916 was 492,106, an increase of 330,000 fans. So a big improvement from the previous year, an average of 6,299 per game. Opening day was on April 12th, and there was a giveaway. 10,000 fans received Indian headdresses as a giveaway at the game, and there were 18,351 fans at the home opener. Now, a little history. In 1850, Cleveland's population ranked 37th in the United States. By 1910, there were 560,000 people in Cleveland, and it moved up to 6th largest in the country, and that was the largest gain among the leaders. So these were really boom years in Cleveland. Clevelanders bragged that their city, quote, holds the long jump population record. And 1/3 of the folks in Cleveland were born abroad. John D. Rockefeller had founded the Standard Oil Company in Cleveland, became the richest man in the world in the petroleum business, originally for kerosene for lighting, later for gasoline for automobiles. Charles Brush invented the arc light, and was used in Cleveland became the first city to illuminate streets with electricity. Cleveland was a leader in the production of automobile parts. The streets were filled with noisy Winton and Stearns gasoline cars. And Cleveland had been taking steps to maintain its scenic beauty, earning the nickname the Forest City. There was a chain of parks around the city, 2,200 acres, called the Emerald Necklace. The Cleveland Museum of Art opened in the spring of 1916. The cost $1.2 million people. Really a beautiful place. I think it's the best place in Cleveland. On opening day, Cleveland Mayor Harry Davis threw out the first pitch. He wanted new owner Jim Dunn to catch, but Steve O'Neill caught the ball. Central States Film Company filmed opening day, and days later, players went to the Alhambra Theater downtown to watch that. On May 17th, the Tribe won 4-2 against the Senators and Walter Johnson, and Jim Dunn sent a telegram to the team, quote, accept my congratulations for your glorious victory over the mighty Johnson. Have the boys smoke on me tonight. So manager Lee Full visited a local cigar shop and bought all the players fancy cigars, compliments of the owner. On May 21, there was a big crowd at League Park, and all peanuts were sold or had been bought before the first pitch. Now, I'm reading a fine book which is helping me in this video and subsequent ones called The Best They Could Be, How the Cleveland Indians Became the Kings of Baseball, 1916 to 1920, by Scott Longer, 2013. Now, the original owner of the Indians was Charles Summers, and going back to 1900. However, by 1916, he was in severe financial trouble. He had debts of $1.7 million and was pressured by bankers to sell the Indians. which he did to a syndicate headed by Jim Dunn. Eventually, Summers recovered financially. By the time he died in 1934, his estate was worth $3 million. He was in the coal business and owned 20 coal mines in Ohio and Pennsylvania. The new owner was Jim Dunn. Dunn was from Marshalltown, Iowa. He died in Chicago, Illinois in 1922 at age 55. He was a real estate developer. They called him Sonny Jim. And he helped the Indians. He was the owner when the Indians won the World Series in 1920, coming up for only in 4 years. He was very wealthy through his railroad construction firm. In 1916, he had been recruited by American League President Ban Johnson to buy the Indians, and he paid $500,000. League Park was renamed Dunn Field in his name. After he died in 1922, his widow Edith became the Indians' owner until 1927. And he bought the team on February 21, 1916. Now, Ban Johnson, as I said, needed to find a new Cleveland owner because of the financial problems of the previous owner. And he met with Dunn and he said, quote, "You're going to own the Cleveland Ball Club." "Me?" "Yes, you." So they called him Sonny Jim because he had a smiling disposition. He energized Cleveland fans with his go-for-it attitude. And he said, quote, "I'm going to give this city a pennant. I will not stand for a tail-ender. Cleveland is a corking good town, and I think it will make a comeback." The Sporting News reported, quote, "He's of the sort that the game needs, eager to win if he can fairly, but the same old smile if his team loses, the even temperament that gave him the nickname Sonny Jim. In fact, he feels insulted if anyone calls him Mr. Dunn. He is Jim to everybody, which indicates pretty well the stuff he is made of." For 1916, Jim Dunn reduced ticket prices for upper box seats from $1.25 to $1. Jim Dunn. Now, the manager again for the Indians in 1916 was Lee Full, who managed the tribe from 1915 to 1919. Now, the starting lineup, Steve O'Neill was our fine catcher. O'Neill batted .235 with 89 hits, 23 doubles, 29 RBIs, 2 stolen bases in 130 games. O'Neill played for Cleveland from 1911 to 1923 and was manager of the Indians from 1935 to 1937. When he was 10 years old, he stopped school and worked 7 years in the coal mines. And he shoveled coal into cars and developed massive upper body strength. In the minors, he played in Worcester, Massachusetts, and one day he was walking down the street and some hooligans tried to bully him. And so he spoke to them and he said, "I assume you fellows are looking for trouble. If that is what you want, it's perfectly all right with me. All I ask is that you be sports enough to fight only 2 at a time." And so the hooligans backed off. Steve O'Neill was a big, strong guy and a good guy. Steve O'Neill. Chick Gandil was our first baseman. Gandil batted .259 with 138 hits, 26 doubles, 9 triples, 72 RBIs, 13 stolen bases in 146 games. Gandil was from St. Paul, Minnesota. He died in Calistoga, California in 1970 at age 82. A career average of .277 with 1,176 hits and 557 RBIs, 153 stolen bases. Gandil played for the Chicago White Sox, Washington Senators, Cleveland Indians, and back with the White Sox from 1910 to 1919. He led American League first baseman in fielding percentage 4 times. He won a World Series title in 1917 with the White Sox. And in 1919, the Chicago Black Sox scandal, he was the ringleader. He was called a professional malcontent. People described him as mean, callous, and tough. Gandil was the only child of Swiss immigrants. He played some baseball in Mexico. He was also a heavyweight boxer and was paid $150 a fight. In the 1919 scandal, Gandil received $35,000 to help throw the World Series. His salary that year was $4,000. He was banned for life by Judge Landis and the other 7 players involved. He settled in Berkeley, California after baseball and became a plumber. Now, Gandil's story was he admitted to leading the plot to throw the series, and he expressed guilt and remorse. However, he said the players changed their minds and tried to win the series. In 1969, he said, quote, "I'm going to my grave with a clear conscience." Manager Lee Full in 1916 said, quote, "I can point out to you where we lost 20 games in 1915 because of mistakes at first base. With a player of the intelligence of Chick Gandil and his mechanical ability, first base should be played as it has not been since George Stovall was in his prime." Gandil was purchased by Jim Dunn from Washington for $5,000. Chick Gandil. Ivan Howard was at second base. Howard batted .187 with 46 hits, 11 doubles, 5 triples, 23 RBIs, 9 stolen bases in 81 games. Howard was from Kenny, Illinois. He died in Medford, Oregon in 1967 at age 84. Career average of .233 with 2 home runs and 86 RBIs. Howard played for the St. Louis Browns and Cleveland Indians between 1914 and 1917. His brother Dell was also an MLB player. Howard was a manager in the minor leagues for the Oakland Oaks from 1923 to 1929, and he played in the minors for the Cedar Rapids Rabbits and the Los Angeles Angels. Ivan Howard. Bill Wamsgans was back at shortstop. Wamsgans batted .246 with 117 hits, 14 doubles, 4 triples, 45 RBIs, 13 stolen bases in 136 games. And Wamsgans was with Cleveland from 1914 to 1923. Bill Wamsgans. Terry Turner was at third base. Turner batted .262 with 112 hits, 15 doubles, 3 triples, 38 RBIs, 15 stolen bases in 124 games. And Turner was with Cleveland from 1904 to 1918. Terry Turner. Jack Graney was our left fielder. Graney batted .241 with 14 doubles, with 142 hits, 41 doubles, 14 triples, 5 home runs, 54 RBIs, 10 stolen bases in 155 games. Graney played for Cleveland in 1908 and then 1910 to 1922, and he was the Cleveland Indians radio broadcaster from 1932 to 1953. Jack Graney. Tris Speaker was our center fielder. Speaker batted .386. Holy cow. 211 hits, 41 doubles, 8 triples, 2 home runs, 79 RBIs, 35 stolen bases in 151 games. Speaker was from Hubbard, Texas. He died in Whitney, Texas in 1958 at age 70. A career average of .345. Wow. Which is a record. He had 3,514 hits, 792 doubles. That's a major league record. As manager, his record was .617 and .520, winning percentage of .543. He played for the Boston Americans, Boston Red Sox, Cleveland Indians, Washington Senators, and Philadelphia Athletics between 1907 and 1928, and he was the Cleveland manager between 1919 and 1926. He won World Series titles in 1912 and 1915 with the Red Sox, and in 1920 with Cleveland. He was the American League MVP in 1912, and he was the American League batting champion in 1916. He was the American League home run leader in 1912, and the American League RBI leader in 1923. Speaker is in the Boston Red Sox Hall of Fame and the Cleveland Indians Hall of Fame. His records that he has 792 doubles and 449 outfield assists. He was inducted in the Baseball Hall of Fame in 1937. They called him the Gray Eagle because of his prematurely grayed hair and also his ability in center field. They called his glove the place, quote, where triples go to die. In 1999, he was ranked the 27th best player of all time in the top 100. He's a very fast player. He played in shallow center field, almost like a fifth infielder. In 1912, he had 52 stolen bases, which was a Red Sox record, until 1973 when Tommy Harper broke it. He was the first player to have 50 doubles and 50 stolen bases in the same season. He had 6 career unassisted double plays from center field. He would catch a low-line drive and beat the runner to second base. In a 1920 game, shoeless Joe Jackson had a long fly ball. Speaker leaped and crashed against the concrete wall and was knocked unconscious, however, held onto the baseball. He retired in 1937, and then in his latter years, he fell off a 16-foot wall in his second-story home, had a skull fracture, almost died but recovered. He was the founder of the Cleveland Society for Crippled Children. In 1947, he became the Indians' Goodwill Ambassador. He worked as an advisor as scout for the Indians until his death in 1958. Speaker was a mentor for Larry Doby, Luke Easter, Jim Hegan, Ray Boone, and Al Rosen. In 1951, he was inducted into the Texas Sports Hall of Fame. He died of a heart attack at age 70. He collapsed pulling a boat into a dock after a fishing trip. Ty Cobb said he was, quote, terribly depressed. I never let him know how much I admired him when we played against each other. It was only after we finally became teammates and then retired that I could tell Tris Speaker of the underlying respect I had for him. Napoleon Lajoie said, quote, he was one of the greatest fellows I ever knew, both as a baseball player and as a gentleman. Ogden Nash for Sport Magazine wrote in 1949, quote, S is for Speaker, swift center fielder tender. When the ball saw him coming, it yelled, I surrender. As I said, he was prematurely gray. They called him Spoke. He was traded to Cleveland on April 8, 1916, from Boston for Sad Sam Jones, Fred Thomas, and cash, $57,500, and Speaker got $10,000 of that money. Charles C. Alexander, historian, wrote, quote, Tris Speaker discovered that Cleveland's fandom had quickly taken him to heart. He was welcomed as something of a baseball messiah. Some of his greatest seasons were still ahead of him, and as the key figure in the regeneration of Cleveland's fortunes, he proved a far more valuable asset to James C. Dunn than Joseph J. Lannon, the Red Sox owner, could have imagined. Ty Cobb won 9 straight batting titles, but he was dislodged by Tris Speaker in 1916, who won the title. He's considered the best defensive outfielder of his era. He had the habit of picking and chewing blades of grass in the outfield. Speaker taught Will Rogers how to twirl rope. Cleveland sports writer Ed Bang encouraged Indians general manager Bob McRoy to pursue Speaker, who was a holdout with the Red Sox. The $55,000 sale of Speaker was the biggest in MLB history until that time. Franklin Lewis of the Plain Dealer wrote, quote, Tris Speaker, most magnificent of all outfielders, a scrapper in uniform, a hail fellow in street dress, was an Indian. I'm reading a fine book called Tris Speaker, The Rough and Tumble Life of a Baseball Legend by Timothy M. Gay, 2005. In July 1987, Morton Roth for Baseball Digest called Speaker the best outfielder of all time, and he wrote, quote, What's that? Your memory doesn't go back that far? Dare we dismiss all that transpired before our time? Do we deny the sinking of the Titanic, the Battle of Gettysburg? Speaker threw out many batters who hit short line drives at first base as a routine play. As a boy, Speaker learned to ride a horse, hunt, and fish. And as a boy, he was thrown from a horse and had multiple fractures of his lower right arm and a break in his upper right arm and collarbone. He was naturally right-handed, but taught himself to throw and bat left-handed, and he became ambidextrous. He worked in a cottonseed mill and strung telegraph wire as a young man, also a cowpuncher. He played for the Fort Worth Polytechnic. In the minors, he failed as a pitcher, and then he, with Cleveland in Texas, moved to the outfield after a player named Dude Ronson was hit by the pitch. And he said, quote, I shall always be indebted to Ransom for stepping into the beanball that put him on the bench and thereby gave me a chance. There's no telling what would have happened to me. He played for Houston in the Texas League. The players got, quote, spot bonuses from exuberant fans. And Speaker wrote, quote, I have seen a shower of silver thrown at a player as he crossed the plate with a home run. Now, the Red Sox bought him from Houston for $750. He continued in the minor leagues, and he needed his mother's consent for the sale, but she refused, and she said, quote, I've never been so insulted in my life. I will not have my boy being sold around like a slave for so many dollars. Speaker said, quote, I figure that 98% of all safe hits to the outfield drop in front of outfielders or between them. That's why I played so close in. By 1908, he was with Boston to stay, and in 1913, Speaker went on a world tour with other Major League Baseball stars. He met King George V in England and Sir Thomas Lipton, the tea magnate. Also Abbas II, the last Khedive of Egypt, and the Pope in Rome. Jim Thorpe was a part of that group, who had won Olympic gold medals at the 1912 Olympics and played in the NFL and for the New York Giants in Major League Baseball. Thorpe was mobbed in Shanghai, China. They went to Yokohama, Japan, had 3 games in Tokyo. Also went to Australia, Sri Lanka, and France. They met Pope Pius X at the Vatican. Returned to New York City on the Lusitania ship. In 1914, he was with the Red Sox, and there was the Federal League Challenge. That meant salaries went up, and Speaker got a 2-year contract for $18,000 a year, which doubled his salary. By 1916, the Federal League was gone, and the Red Sox wanted Speaker to take a 50% pay cut. So there was a conflict, and he became a holdout, and then was traded to Cleveland. Timothy M. Gay wrote, quote, "Cleveland's elite welcomed Speaker as the savior of the baseball franchise, the successor of the great Napoleon Lajoie. Spoke was embraced as one of their own. Almost immediately, he felt at home in Cleveland in a way that he never experienced in Boston. He became friends with Morris Ackerman, who was a fishing and hunting columnist for the Cleveland News. They took trips together in the woods, and Ackerman wrote, quote, "There never has been any work too hard or unpleasant on any trip that Tris Speaker has not tackled with a whim to a satisfactory conclusion. He will cook for 9 men and have a lot of fun at the job. At washing dishes, he is a bear, and at digging bait and at cutting wood, he only asks the chance. Tris Speaker." Brago Roth was in right field. Roth batted .286 with 117 hits, 19 doubles, 7 triples, 4 home runs, 72 RBIs, 29 stolen bases in 125 games. And Roth was with Cleveland from 1915 to 1918. Ray Chapman was an infielder. Chapman batted .231 with 80 hits, 10 doubles, 5 triples, 27 RBIs, 21 stolen bases in 109 games. Chapman was with Cleveland from 1912 to 1920. Carl Mays, pitcher for the New York Yankees, hit Chapman in 1920, who died after that. Mays in 1917 led the American League with 14 hit by the pitch. He was called a beaner, a pitcher who throws beanballs and hits batters in the head. In the 1918 World Series, Mays was the winning pitcher in the last game, 3-1, helping the Red Sox beat the Cubs and win the title. Ray Chapman's friends included Johnny Kilbane. In 1912, won the featherweight boxing title, defeated Abe Adel, who was the intermediary in the 1919 World Series Black Sox scandal. Chapman grew up working in the mines in Illinois. He always carried a membership card for Local 986, the United Mine Workers, as a reminder of his humble beginnings. He had an ever-pleasant smile, and it was written, quote, "He was a very flashy player, and he could run. He was a beautiful runner, the way he would pick up his knees. He was very fast, had a good arm, and was a good fielder, although at times a little erratic. And he was very jolly, a jolly guy, always laughing, talking, singing. That's what made him popular with a lot of people. A friendly fellow, very friendly with everybody." In 1914, Chapman was out with injury, and Henry Edwards of the Plain Dealer wrote, quote, "The first 6 weeks of the season with Chapman in the hospital was like traveling with mourners. Never a song, never a funny story, never a thing to bring a smile. It was the most discouraged aggregation of ball players I ever saw, and it remained such until Chapman rejoined the team." In 1916, Chapman tagged a runner at second base, but his spikes got caught in the bag, and he fell and had a severely twisted knee and was out for a month. After he returned, he was affected by that injury and had the worst batting average of his career. Ray Chapman. Another outfielder was Elmer Smith, who batted .277 with 59 hits, 15 doubles, 3 triples, 3 home runs, 40 RBIs, 3 stolen bases in 79 games. And Smith was with Cleveland from 1914 to 1921. Elmer Smith. Joe Evans played some third base. Evans batted .146 with 12 hits, In 82 at-bats, a double, an RBI, 4 stolen bases. He walked 7 times, struck out 12 times in 33 games. And Evans was with Cleveland from 1915 to 1922. Joe Evans. Tom Daly was a spare catcher. Daly batted .219 with 16 hits, 73 at-bats, a double, a triple, 8 RBIs, scored 3 runs in 31 games. Daly was from St. John, New Brunswick, Canada. He died in Medford, Maine in 1946 at age 54. Career average of .239 with 55 RBIs. Daly played for the Chicago White Sox, Cleveland Indians, and Chicago Cubs between 1913 and 1921. He won a National League title with the Cubs in 1918. He was a manager in the minor leagues for the Toronto Maple Leafs in 1932. He was Boston Red Sox coach from 1937 to 1943. In the minor leagues, he played for the Montreal Royals and the Wilkes-Barre Barons. Tom Daly. Walter Barber played some third base. Barber batted .229 with 11 hits and 48 at-bats, a double, 3 RBIs, scored 3 runs, walked 4 times, struck out 9 times in 13 games. Barber was with Cleveland from 1914 to 1916, and he continued in the major leagues until 1922. So this was the end of the time of Walter Barber's time in Cleveland. Marty Cavanaugh was an infielder. He played some second base. He also was in the outfield, third base, and shortstop. Cavanaugh batted .250 with 11 hits and 44 at-bats, scored 4 times, 2 doubles, a triple, a home run, 10 RBIs in 19 games. Cavanaugh was from Harrison, New Jersey. He died in Taylor, Michigan in 1960 at age 69. A career average of .249 with 10 home runs and 122 RBIs. Cavanaugh played for the Detroit Tigers, Cleveland Indians, and St. Louis Cardinals between 1914 and 1918. His parents were Irish immigrants. After he retired from baseball, he became an iron worker in the construction industry. He was the manager of the Detroit Amateur Baseball Federation. September 24th, Cavanaugh had the first MLB pinch hit grand slam in the 5th inning and a 5-3 win against Boston at Dunn Field. Marty Cavanaugh. Hank DeBerry was another catcher. DeBerry batted .273 with 9 hits and 33 at-bats, scored 7 times, 4 doubles, 4 RBIs, walked 6 times, struck out 9 times in 15 games. DeBerry was from Savannah, Tennessee. He died in Savannah in 1951 at age 56. Career average of .267 with 11 home runs and 234 RBIs. DeBerry played for the Cleveland Indians and Brooklyn Robins between 1916 and 1930. He was a good defensive catcher. He caught Hall of Famer pitcher Dazzy Vance. DeBerry went to the University of Tennessee. In World War I, he was in the U.S. Navy. And as catcher for Dazzy Vance, he helped that pitcher lead the National League in strikeouts 7 straight years from 1922 to 1928. And he caught Dazzy Vance's no-hitter in 1925. DeBerry was a manager in the minors and a scout for the New York Giants. In the minor leagues, he played for the Paducah Indians, Chillicothe Babes, and Dallas Steers. Hank DeBerry. Danny Moeller was a utility player. Moeller batted .067 with 2 hits and 30 at-bats, scored 5 times, had an RBI, 2 stolen bases, walked 5 times, struck out 6 times in 25 games. Moeller was from DeWitt, Iowa. He died in Florence, Alabama in 1951 at age 66. Career average of .243 with 15 home runs and 192 RBIs. Moeller played for the Pittsburgh Pirates, Washington Senators, and Cleveland Indians between 1907 to 1916, so this was the end of his MLB career. He was 21st in 1912 in the American League MVP voting. He had the second most stolen bases in the majors in 1913 with 62. In the minor leagues, he played for the Milliken Big Blue and the Burlington Flint Hills. Danny Moeller. Bob Coleman was another catcher. Coleman batted .214 with 6 hits and 28 at-bats, scored 3 times, had 2 doubles, 4 RBIs, walked 7 times, struck out 6 times in 19 games. Coleman was from Huntingburg, Indiana. He died in Boston, Massachusetts in 1959 at age 68. Career average of .241 with 1 home run and 27 RBIs. Coleman played for the Pittsburgh Pirates and Cleveland Indians between 1913 and 1916. He He was a manager for the Boston Braves between 1943 and 1945. Had a record of 128 and 165, a winning percentage of .437. He won 2,496 games in the minor leagues as a manager. He was the 3I League Manager of the Year 6 times in 1935, 37, 38, 41, 46, and 51. Coleman was in pro baseball between 1919 and 1957. He was a manager in the minor leagues. He won 10 pennants and 5 titles. He managed the Evansville Hubs for 20 years. Had a winning percentage in the minors of .543. And he played in the minors for the Davenport Prodigals and the Knoxville Smokies. Bob Coleman. Josh Billings was another catcher. Billings batted .161 with 5 hits and 31 at-bats, scored twice, had an RBI, 2 doubles, walked twice, struck out 11 times in 22 games. Billings was with Cleveland from 1913 to 1918. Josh Billings. Clyde Engel was a utility player. Engel batted .154 with 4 hits and 26 at-bats, scored a run, had an RBI, struck out 6 times in 11 games. Engel was from Dayton, Ohio. He died in Boston, Massachusetts in 1939 at age 55. Career average of .265 with 12 home runs and 318 RBIs. Engel played for the New York Highlanders, Boston Red Sox, Buffalo Buffets, Buffalo Blues, and Cleveland Indians between 1909 and 1916. They called him Heck. He was a super utility man, could play all positions except pitcher and catcher, mostly first base and third base. He won a World Series title in 1912 with the Boston Red Sox. After he retired, he became the athletic director and football coach at the University of Vermont. In the 1912 World Series, in the decisive Game 8 at Fenway Park in the 10th inning, the Red Sox against the Giants, the Giants were up 2-1, and Engel scored the tying run. Then the Red Sox went on to win the game and the World Series, so he played a major role. Clyde Engel. Milo Allison played some outfield. Allison batted .278 with 5 hits and 18 at-bats. He had scored 10 runs, walked 6 times, struck out once in 14 games. Allison was from Elk Rapids, Michigan. He died in Kenosha, Wisconsin in 1957 at age 66. Career average of .217 with 13 hits. Allison played for the Chicago Cubs and Cleveland Indians between 1913 and 1917. And in the minor leagues, he played for the Cadillac Chiefs, the Memphis Chickasaws, and the New Orleans Pelicans. Milo Allison. Lou Giusto played some first base. Giusto batted .158 with 3 hits and 19 at-bats, scored twice, 2 RBIs, a stolen base, walked 4 times, struck out 3 times in 6 games. Giusto is from Napa, California. He died in Napa in 1989 at age 94. Career average of .196 with 88 hits and 35 runs scored. Giusto played for the Cleveland Indians between 1916 and 1917, and then from 1921 to 1923. He was a manager in the minor leagues between 1929 and 1931. He went to St. Mary's College. He was an outfielder in California. And he played, the baseball field has been renamed Louis Giusto Field. In the minor leagues, he played for the Portland Beavers and Oakland Oaks. Lou Giusto. Al Bergman played some second base. Bergman batted .214 with 3 hits and 14 at-bats, scored twice, had a triple, walked twice, struck out 4 times in 8 games. Bergman was from Peru, Indiana. He died in Fort Wayne, Indiana in 1961 at age 71. His MLB career was just with the Cleveland Indians in 1916. They called him Big Dutch. He went to the University of Notre Dame, and he was the only athlete there who earned 11 letters. Football, baseball, basketball, and track. In 1911, he set an unbreakable record with a 105-yard return in football. His brother Arthur was the head coach for the Washington Redskins. Al Bergman. Howard Lohr played some outfield. Lohr batted .143 with 1 hit and 7 at-bats, an RBI, a stolen base, struck out once in 3 games. Lohr was from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. He died in Philadelphia in 1977 at age 84. Career average of .204 with 8 RBIs. Lohr played for the Cincinnati Reds in 1914 The Cleveland Indians in 1916. Howard Lohr. Jack Bradley was a catcher, batted 3 times, did not have a hit, struck out once in 2 games. Bradley was from Denver, Colorado. He died in Tulsa, Oklahoma in 1969 at age 75. Bradley played for the Cleveland Indians in 1916, so this was the extent of his MLB career. He also played for the Illinois Fighting Illini, the Vancouver Beavers, and the Portland Pippins. Jack Bradley. Larry Chappell played some outfield. Chappell batted twice, did not have a hit, walked once, had a stolen base in 3 games. Chappell was from McCluskey, Illinois. He died in San Francisco, California in 1918 at age 28. Career average of .226 with 26 RBIs. Chappell played for the Chicago White Sox, Cleveland Indians, and Boston Braves between 1913 and 1917. He died of Spanish flu in 1918 in a U.S. Army camp. One of 18 MLB players who were either killed or died of illness serving in the armed forces in World War I. In the minor leagues, he played for the Salt Lake City Bees. Larry Chappell. Joe Leonard played some second base. Leonard batted twice, scored a run, had a stolen base in 3 games. Leonard was from West Chicago, Illinois. He died in Washington, D.C. in 1920 at age 26. Career average of .226 with 2 home runs and 61 RBIs. Leonard played for the Pittsburgh Pirates, Cleveland Indians, and Washington Senators between 1914 and 1920. Joe Leonard. Ali Welf was a pinch runner. He was an outfielder, got in 1 game, did not bat. Welf was from Cleveland, Ohio. He died in Cleveland in 1967 at age 78, and his MLB career was just with the Cleveland Indians in 1916. And he played outfield in the minor leagues for the Greenford Chauffeurs, the Hattiesburg Timberjacks, and the Columbus Joyriders. Ali Welf. Now the pitching staff, our ace pitcher was Jim Bagby. Bagby batted .167 with 15 hits and 90 at-bats, scored 12 runs, 2 doubles, a triple, 4 RBIs, a stolen base, struck out 6 times in 51 games. Bagby's pitching record was 16-17 with an ERA of 2.61. 48 games, 27 starts, 14 complete games, 3 shutouts, and 5 saves. Bagby was from Barnett, Georgia. He died in Marietta, Georgia in 1954 at age 64. A career record of 127-88, 3.11 ERA, 450 strikeouts. Bagby pitched for the Cincinnati Reds, Cleveland Indians, and Pittsburgh Pirates between 1912 and 1923. He won a World Series title in 1920 with Cleveland. He's the American League win leader in 1920. He's in the Cleveland Indians Hall of Fame. In 1920, he became the first pitcher to hit a home run in the World Series. And he's the last pitcher to win 30 games in 1 season. He's one of the last 3 pitchers. His record was 31-12 in 1920. Since Bagby, the only pitchers who have won 30 games are Dizzy Dean, Lefty Grove, and Denny McLain. 1921, Babe Ruth, the home run leader, hit his 120th home run against Bagby to become the all-time home run leader. He is considered to have the 9th best screwball of all time by Bill James. His son, Jim Bagby Jr., was also an MLB pitcher in 1946 and pitched in the 1946 World Series. So that was the first time a father and son had both pitched in World Series. Jim Bagby. Stan Kovaleski was another starting pitcher. Kovaleski batted .173 with 13 hits and 75 at-bats, scored 8 times, had a double, 2 triples, a home run, 5 RBIs, walked once, struck out 19 times in 45 games. Kovaleski's record was 15-13 with an ERA of 3.41, 45 games, 27 starts, 11 complete games, a shutout, and 3 saves. Kovaleski was from Shamokin, Pennsylvania. He died in South Bend, Indiana in 1984 at age 94. Career record of .215 and 142 with an ERA of 2.89 and 981 strikeouts. Kovaleski pitched for the Philadelphia Athletics, Cleveland Indians, Washington Senators, and New York Yankees between 1912 and 1928. He won a World Series title with Cleveland in 1920. Two-time American League ERA leader in 1923 and 1925. He was the American League strikeout leader in 1920. Kovaleski is in the Cleveland Indians Hall of Fame, And he was inducted in the Baseball Hall of Fame in 1961. He threw a spitball. He won 3 games in the 1920 World Series. His brother Jacob died serving in the Spanish-American War. Coveleski worked in a coal mine and starting as a boy and was working 72 hours a week and paid 5 cents an hour. He said this, quote, "There was nothing strange in those days about a 12-year-old Polish kid working in the mines for 72 hours a week at a nickel an hour. What was strange is that I ever got out of there." He rarely played baseball growing up because he was working. At night, he would throw stones at a tin can 50 feet away. And he said, quote, "When it came to throwing a baseball, why, it was easy to pitch. After all, the plate's a lot bigger than a tin can to throw at." 1917, he was the ace and the opening day starter in Cleveland. In 1920, the spitball was banned, but Coveleski and others were allowed to continue till they retired. 1920, his wife died in May. In the 1920 World Series, he had an ERA of 0.67, which is a record. 1921, he remarried his wife's sister, Frances. And he said, quote, "The best thing that happened to me in Cleveland was pitching to Steve O'Neill. He caught me 9 years in Cleveland and knew me so well, he didn't even need to give me a sign." After he retired, Coveleski ran the Coveleski Service Station in South Bend, Indiana. He said this about getting into the Baseball Hall of Fame, quote, "I figured I'd make it sooner or later, and I just kept hoping each year would be the year." He died in a nursing home. He's in the National Polish American Sports Hall of Fame, inducted in 1976. In one game, he pitched 7 innings, and every pitch was either a hit or a strike. Bill James said that Coveleski was the 58th best pitcher of all time. He was considered taciturn and ornery on days when he pitched, otherwise friendly, with a lively sense of humor. His real name was Stanislaus Kowalewski at birth. At one time, Stan and his brother Harry, who together they won 297 games. That was the most by 2 brothers until the record was broken by Gaylord and Jim Perry, and then Phil and Joe Necro. Growing up, as I said, he grew up working in a coal mine, and he said, quote, "They never saw the sunlight. Most of the year I went to work in the dark and came home in the dark. I enjoyed playing baseball, but it's a tough racket. There's always someone sitting on the bench just itching to get in there in your place. Thinks he can do better. Wants your job in the worst way. Back to the coal mines for you, pal. The pressure never lets up. Doesn't matter what you did yesterday, that's history. It's tomorrow that counts. So you worry all the time. It never ends. Lord, baseball is a worrying thing." Stan Coveleski. Guy Morton was another starting pitcher. Morton batted .211 with 12 hits and 57 at-bats, scored 7 times, had 5 RBIs, struck out 14 times in 27 games. Morton's record was 12-6 as a pitcher, ERA of 2.89, 27 games, 18 starts, 9 complete games, and Morton was with Cleveland from 1914 to 1924. Guy Morton. Ed Klepfer was another starting pitcher. Klepfer batted .025 with 1 hit and 40 at-bats, scored 3 times, walked 3 times, struck out 13 times in 31 games. Klepfer's pitching record was 6-6 with an ERA of 2.52, 31 games, 13 starts, 4 complete games, a shutout, and 2 saves. And Klepfer was with Cleveland from 1915 to 1917 and then 1919. Ed Klepfer. Fritz Kuhn was another pitcher. Kuhn batted .057 with 2 hits and 35 at-bats, a double, an RBI. He struck out 11 times in 31 games. His pitching record was 7-5 with an ERA of 2.02. 29 games, 13 starts, 7 complete games, and 2 shutouts. And Kuhn was with Cleveland from 1914 to 1919. Fritz Kuhn. Al Gould was another pitcher. Gould batted .103 with 3 hits and 29 at-bats. Scored twice, had an RBI, walked once, struck out 12 times in 30 games. Gould had a pitching record of 5-6. An ERA of 2.53, 30 games, 9 starts, 6 complete games, a shutout, and a save. Gould was from Muscatine, Iowa. He died in San Jose, California in 1982 at age 89. Career record of 9-11, 57 games, and 1 shutout. pitched for Cleveland in 1916 and 1917. They called him Pudgy. He had 14 seasons in the Pacific Coast League, a record of 127 and 134. He led the league in winning percentage in 1927. In 1919, he had 2 complete game victories in a doubleheader. He pitched for the Salt Lake City Bees for 5 seasons, also for the Muscatine Buttonmakers and the Hollywood Stars. Al Gould. Fred Beebe was another pitcher. Beebe batted .214 with 6 hits and 28 at-bats, scored 4 runs, had a triple, an RBI, walked once, struck out 8 times in 20 games. Beebe's pitching record was 5-3 with an ERA of 2.41. 20 games, 12 starts, 5 complete games, a shutout, and 2 saves. Beebe was from Lincoln, Nebraska. He died in Elgin, Illinois in 1957 at age 77. A career record of 62 and 83, ERA of 2.86, 634 strikeouts. Beebe pitched for the Chicago Cubs, St. Louis Cardinals, Cincinnati Reds, Philadelphia Phillies, and Cleveland Indians between 1909 and 1916. He was the National League strikeout leader in 1906. Went to the University of Illinois. He was the head coach of the Indiana Hoosiers baseball team. In the minor leagues, he pitched for the Wichita Witches. Fred Beebe. Otis Lambeth was another pitcher. Lambeth batted .111 with 3 hits and 27 at-bats, scored twice, had a triple, struck out 9 times in 16 games. Lambeth was from Berlin, Kansas. He died in Moran, Kansas in 1976 at age 86. A career record of 4-4 with an ERA of 2.92. 15 games, 9 starts, 3 complete games, and a save. His career record was 11-10 with an ERA of 3.18 and 58 strikeouts. Lambeth was with the Cleveland Indians from 1916 to 1918, and in the minor leagues he pitched for the Topeka Savages. Otis Lambeth. Joe Bowling was another pitcher. Bowling batted .263 with 5 hits and 19 at-bats, scored a run, had a double, walked once, struck out 6 times in 13 games. Bowling's pitching record was 2-4 with an ERA of 2.67, 12 games, 9 starts, and 3 complete games. Bowling was from Richmond, Virginia. He died in Richmond in 1941 at age 50. A career record of 55-50, ERA of 2.97, and 396 strikeouts. Bowling pitched for the Washington Senators and Cleveland Indians between 1912 and 1920. After he retired, he was a manager in the American Legion baseball team in Richmond. He worked in the feed and seed business. He died at age 50 from injuries from a fall. In the minor leagues, he played for the Oakland Oaks. Joe Bowling. Grover Loudermilk was another pitcher. Loudermilk batted .167 with 3 hits and 18 at-bats, scored a run, had 2 doubles, struck out 8 times in 10 games. Loudermilk's pitching record was 1-5 with an ERA of 3.16, 10 games, 9 starts, and 2 complete games. Loudermilk was from Sanborn, Indiana. He died in Odin, Illinois in 1968 at age 83. A career record of 23-39 with an ERA of 3.58 and 296 strikeouts. Loudermilk pitched for the St. Louis Cardinals, Chicago Cubs, St. Louis Browns, Detroit Tigers, Cleveland Indians, and Chicago White Sox between 1909 and 1920. They called him Slim. Grover and his brother Lou were teammates in 1911 with the Cardinals. He was favorably compared to Walter Johnson, except he could not control his blazing fastball. In the 1919 Black Sox scandal, he was on the team but not involved in that scandal. He played for the minor leagues for the Mattoon Giants and the Decatur Commodores. Grover Loudermilk. Willie Mitchell was another pitcher. Mitchell batted 11 times, did not have a hit, walked once, struck out 4 times in 12 games. His pitching record was 2-5 with an ERA of 5.15, 12 games, 6 starts, a complete game, and a save. Mitchell was with Cleveland from 1909 to 1916, and he continued in the minor leagues until 1919. So this was the last year in Cleveland for Willie Mitchell. He had given us a lot of good years. Willie Mitchell. Pop Boy Smith was another pitcher. Smith batted .286, 2 hits and 7 at-bats, an RBI, struck out once in 5 games. Smith's pitching record was 1-2, ERA of 3.86, 5 games, 3 starts, and a save. Smith was from Newport, Tennessee. He died in Sweetwater, Texas in 1924 at age 31. Career record of 1-4 with an ERA of 4.21 and 20 strikeouts. Smith pitched for the Chicago White Sox in 1913 and the Cleveland Indians in 1916 and 1917. In the minors, he pitched for the Venice Tigers and the Birmingham Barons. Pop Boy Smith. Ken Penner was another pitcher. Penner batted twice, did not have a hit in 4 games. Pitching record of 1-1 with an ERA of 4.26. 4 games, 2 starts, and 12 2/3 innings pitched. Penner was from Boonville, Indiana. He died in Sacramento, California in 1959 at age 63. A career record of 1-2 with an ERA of 3.55 and 8 strikeouts. Penner pitched for the Cleveland Indians in 1916 and the Chicago Cubs in 1929. He won a National League title with the Cubs in 1929. He had 28 seasons in the minor leagues. He won the league ERA title in 1916 for the Marshallton Ansons in the Central Association. In 1927, for the Houston Buffaloes, he was pitching there in the Texas League. He was a manager in the minor leagues from 1934 to 1944, a record of .437 and .636, winning percentage of .407. He won a pennant with the St. Louis Cardinals in 1945 to 1957. In the minors, he pitched for the Keokuk Indians, Wichita Izzies, and Bellingham Chinooks. Ken Penner. Marty McHale was another pitcher. McHale got in 2 games, batted twice, did not have a hit in 5 games. His record as a pitcher was he had no decisions with an ERA of 5.56, 5 games, and 11 1/3 innings pitched. McHale was from Stoneham, Massachusetts. He died in Hempstead, New York in 1979 at age 92. Career record of 11-30, ERA of 3.57, and 131 strikeouts. McHale pitched for the Boston Red Sox, New York Yankees, and Cleveland Indians between 1910 and 1916. He was teammates with Smokey Joe Wood, Tris Speaker, and Babe Ruth. They called him the Caruso of baseball. He was a vaudeville performer. He was a stockbroker for 52 years. In the minors, he played for the Maine Black Bears. Marty McHale. Rip Hagerman was another pitcher. Hagerman batted once, did not have a hit in 2 games. No decisions, ERA of 12.27. 2 games, 3 2/3 innings pitched. Hagerman pitched for Cleveland from 1914 to 1916, and in 1917 he was in the minor leagues. Rip Hagerman. Red Gunkel was another pitcher. Gunkel got in 1 game, did not bat, had no decisions, and ERA of 0.00, 1 innings pitched. Gunkel was from Sheffield, Illinois. He died in Chicago, Illinois in 1954 at age 60. Pitched for the Cleveland Indians in 1916. Went to the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, and in the minors for the Davenport Blue Sox. And finally, Shorty Desjardins was another pitcher. He got in 1 game, did not bat, and he had no decisions in the ERA of 18.00. In 1 game, 1 innings pitched, and allowed 2 runs. Desjardins was from Coffeyville, Kansas. He died in Monrovia, California in 1956 at age 62. Pitched for the Cleveland Indians in 1916. He played football, baseball, and basketball at the University of Chicago and had a no-hitter there. He played pro football in the NFL for the Cleveland Indians. Well, this is pre-NFL. The Hammond Pros in 1919, the Chicago Tigers in 1920, and the Minneapolis Marines in 1922. He's in the College Football Hall of Fame, inducted in 1955. He won 12 varsity letters in college. He was 6'5". He was a center for Amos Alonzo Stagg's Chicago Maroons from 1912 to 1914 and captain of the 1914 team and an All-American. In 1916, he was the football coach at Oberlin. In 1917, he played pro basketball for Pine Village, Indiana. He was in the U.S. Army in World War I. In 1918, he was in charge of a German POW camp in Paris, France. In 1920, he played for the Chicago Tigers, the first year in the NFL. 1922, for Ironwood, in the semi-pro league, he had punts of 50, 55, and 65 yards. After he retired, Desjardins worked as a manufacturing executive in Los Angeles. After the World Series, the Brooklyn Robins, who were the National League champions, were defeated in the World Series by the Boston Red Sox 4-1. The Robins star players included Wilbert Robinson, Rube Marquard, Casey Stengel, and Zach Wheat. And the Red Sox had Harry Hooper, Herb Peenock, and Babe Ruth. So that's the story of the 1916 Cleveland Indians. It was a new era. There was a lot of excitement in Cleveland with the arrival of Tris Speaker. God bless the fellows who played for the Indians in 1916 and everyone else associated with the team, including the fans, especially the Civil War veterans and the Spanish-American War veterans. Captains of the Cuyahoga, lovers of Lake Erie, Terminal Tower Power, fans of the Free Stamp Statue and the Fountain of Eternal Life, Euclid Avenue Electricity, First Energy Stadium friends, Progressive Field pals, Quicken Loans Arena enthusiasts, Tribe, Browns, Cavs, Monsters, and Gladiators rule. Cleveland, City of Champions. Cleveland is the best location in the nation on the north coast of America. New York is the Big Apple. Cleveland is a plum. It's been 70 years since 1948. This is our year. Go Tribe. Thank you so much for watching. I really, really appreciate it. God bless you. Take care, and I'll see you next time.